to Sessions from the Edge. Every transformation begins with disruption, a diagnosis, a loss, a moment of, oh, what now? But the problem isn't just medical, it's identity. When your body betrays you, who are you now? How do you keep going when life no longer fits the old map? We don't sugarcoat it here. We walk right into the mess, into the real questions, the jagged edges and the unknowns. Because the only way out is through. And it starts with a new kind of story, one that starts on the edge of time. Now is that moment. I'm Paul Cobbin, your host and fellow traveller. Here in Sessions from the Edge, I don't have all the answers, but I have found people who have lived through the fire we're going through, or they have solutions that we might find useful. This is the first edition, but I'm going to sit down with fellow Titans and practitioners on a regular basis and talk to those navigating chronic conditions, unexpected diagnoses, and soul-deep resets. These conversations are about guests offering their wisdom and insight to help us decode our diagnosis by aligning mind, body, and soul. Together, we hold the space for stories that rarely get airtime, the sacred, the shattered, the rebuilt, and the renowned. These conversations are not about shouting from the mountaintops, but clinging to the action on the steep climb up. Our plan here is simple. I'll ask a couple of questions and we'll listen to the moments it all broke open. Through those pathways, we'll track the rebuild, what held, what cracked, and what surprised even my guests. Each episode follows the path through their identity, resilience, values, and action. Along the way, you'll hear practical wisdom you can use. No fluff, no performance, because transformation isn't abstract. It's daily, it's cellular. And I know from experience, it's always unfinished. And importantly, as we all know, you don't need to have it all together to begin. So what does all of this mean? It means you're not alone in your questions. You're not alone. You're not the only one whispering, I didn't choose this, but I did have to choose what's next. This is your invitation to listen deeply, to hear echoes of your own story in the voices of others, and I encourage you to begin writing your next chapter, not someday, but now, today. Even in the fog, even on the knife edge of now, there's power in just showing up. So let's all take a breath and begin. Today's special because it marks the first episode of the first season of Sessions from the Edge. And literally 5 minutes before we went live, all my computer stuff cracked down. And so I'm sitting here on a couch in front of my iPhone and my iPad with the text in front of it. So apologies for reading off the paper here. But today is special. And it's always been a special spot in my heart and in the pathway to the journey of Decode Your Diagnosis to actually start these sections. So it's my extreme pleasure to introduce our first special guest. Melissa Gough is the founder of the Brain Gamechanger. She's a professional educator, a writer, a podcaster, a public speaker, and a guest presenter. So if success in life was a measure of career accolades, then Melissa's already extremely successful. But that's not why she's here. Melissa's true success is in her resilience and her tenacity in surviving a subarachnoid hemorrhage in May 2021. Yep, that's absolutely right, during COVID. And that is the worst time for a chronic condition to show itself, I can tell you. So before I mess anything up and try to explain what a subarachnoid hemorrhage, which I thought was spiders running through brains and things, but anyway, turns out it's not. So Melissa, welcome to Sessions from the Edge, and thank you for jumping at this at such a last moment.
Oh, Paul, it's really wonderful to be here, and I feel very honoured that I'm your first. I know I'm going to be your first of many, and I love the fact we have lived experience. So you're going to be speaking to many titans, no doubt, but I'm very honoured to be here, and if anything that I can say can make a difference to anybody, then I feel like my job's done. So thank you. It's a real honour to be here.
It's a pleasure having you. So, well, this week's chapter key release was chapter 3 of the Trinity U, and it's titled The Moment of Diagnosis. So the theme for this conversation will be directed towards the moment of diagnosis for Melissa. But before we get into the impact of your diagnosis, Melissa, could you describe what a subarachnoid hemorrhage is and how it impacts the body?
Okay, so I'm going to throw a few extra words on subarachnoid hemorrhage.
Please
So
do.
yeah, I know it's interesting. I want to talk. I'm going to talk more about trying to um, tell people what I went through because there's more. So I actually went through what's called a non-aneurysmal subarachnoid brain hemorrhage. A real mouthful. I know. It took me it took me quite a while to learn how to say that in its sequence. I remember getting told 5 days into my hospital when I was in a hospital, 5 days. We knew I'd had a brain hemorrhage. We didn't know what type, to what capacity. And I remember 5 days, and I remember asking a nurse to write that down, and I would just hold it up to people. This is what I've had because I was still learning how to say it.
Mm,
So basically, a non-aneurysmal subarachnoid brain hemorrhage means that it is a rupture. It's a bleed in the brain. It ruptures into in an area of the brain, and mine in particular occurred in the brainstem area. So a lot of people tend to get it confused with aneurysms. That word sort of people tend to know that word a lot more, which is more about in the brain muscle, but mine's an actual bleed into a space, and it just happened to be in this that we've got a subarachnoid area
down here
in
somewhere,
and
is it?
I won't go too medical and
Yeah.
technical, and it ruptured into that space.
So, it's from what I understand, it's sort of between the grey matter, as we sort of commonly know, the stuff in the brain, and the linings, the bone and linings at the surface. Is that right?
Yes. So you've sort of got you obviously got your skull area, and then you've got all these layers, that then lead to our actual, muscle tissue of the
Mm,
brain.
mm,
And there's an area, it's where sort of the cerebral spinal fluid and fluid sort of goes into that area, and
mm.
it is that sort of subarachnoid area. So my bleed ruptured into an area of that space.
Down
At
here.
Yeah, down the back of my it's sort of that connect it's that sort of little curve area where
Mm.
your head space starts to meet your spinal cord space, I guess is the best way to describe it.
Wow. And how does that impact, like, what happens when that, so, okay, the blood goes and you start, having a hemorrhage. What are
Mm,
the, I mean, during COVID, oh my god, what
yeah.
what went on? Was it at home when this happened? Were you at hospital? What?
No, I was actually well, I would say I was with my partner at the time. We're no
Yeah.
longer together, but at the time I was with my partner, and I was at his house, and it was a Sunday. It was a beautiful May day in Melbourne, one of those rare
Mm.
sunny
Oh,
days, and
gorgeous.
I know, it was beautiful, and we live not far from the beach, so we just got back from a walk and decided, okay, let's go be cheeky and go get fish and chips on the. It was just a beautiful day,
Mm,
and We just got back from sort of doing a pretty vigorous walk. I was in my gym gear. I went to get changed, and it was almost like I remember sitting on the bed. I wasn't someone who suffered migraines or headaches.
no.
It was almost like this sudden sort of pop explosion, sort of. I felt it in the back of my head, just going, "Oh, that felt weird."
Mm,
And then I sort of proceeded to try, but everything sort of went south very quickly. So my type of hemorrhage, which falls under again a very VIP broad area of a stroke, is very aggressive, very quick. Um,
mm,
I'm very aware statistically now which side I sit on, but my symptoms escalated very quickly. It was like, without sounding too gruesome, it was very aggressive vomiting and um, extreme pain. Wasn't able to use my body. Everything was going. My face was numb. My body was going numb. And within a short period of time, I was on the floor unconscious, and it was a 000 emergency call.
And COVID's around. So how quickly did they respond?
I don't know. I was in and out of consciousness at the
Right.
time, but for me, it felt very quickly. And what I've learnt, obviously, there are certain keywords that if you say when you ring, it obviously sounds quite serious.
Brain
So
hemorrhage, next available
he's on the
operator
floor,
now.
she's unconscious. Yeah, get
Yeah,
here
totally.
now. Yeah.
Totally right.
And we had 2 paramedics show up, and yeah, within a short period of time, I was making my way to. I was very lucky that I live about 8 kilometres, very close to a major trauma hospital. So I
Right.
was very lucky to get there.
And you got to the hospital. What sort of transgressed then? Like, I mean, what happened?
Okay, so I'm in the ramping bay. So I've been, and again, this is all new territory for me. So I get wheeled to the ramping bay. I'm in and out of consciousness. I don't remember a lot of things, but I just remember you sort of feel like you're dreaming because you're there but you're not there.
Mm.
And there's a lot of noise, and I remember we sort of stop, and there must have been the handover going on from the paramedics to the nurse. So I've already been I've already made it up to the front. Because reality is, if you're up at the front of the ramping bay, you're in the right place for all the wrong reasons. So I'm not doing very well. No. So I'm not doing very well. And it's funny, one thing I do remember is I remember a woman's voice, and she must have okay, they're number 1, they're number 2, they're number 3. I was number 3. I heard that she's number 3. And I remember thinking, excuse my holy shit, I feel like I'm about to die. Like, I remember thinking, I feel
Yeah.
like shit and I'm
Yeah.
about to die.
Yeah.
I wonder what's going on with number 1.
Yeah.
I remember that. And then literally like in a movie set, someone called action, and that first person needed to have immediate CPR and the defibrillator.
Mm.
I remember
Yep.
hearing that. I could hear that. So there's a lot going on. It's very raw, very real. And I don't know, something must have happened to me. I must have presented with some new symptoms, because all I remember is I'm on the trolley, and there's someone just yelling, "We got to get her through. We got to get her through now." And everything blacked out, and I was getting wheeled off somewhere. So I went from bad to worse. And I believe I was unconscious after that for a very long time.
Wow. Now, I did notice then while we were talking about that we struck a nerve, and this is
Mhm.
not about, getting likes or points or anything like that. So if at any stage I've gone in a direction or touched on a nerve that you're not comfortable with, just we'll stop there and move in another direction. So please
Thank
keep
you.
that in
No,
mind.
no worries. No,
Yes.
thank you, Paul. I appreciate that respect. This is okay to talk about.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So all right, so you wheeled into the operating table, whatever they had to do, they did, and you came out. What then happened after that? Like in terms of how long did you stay in hospital and how long was the recovery process of that particular incident?
Overall, I was in hospital for 2 weeks. So what happened is they must have wheeled me off, and I went and had brain scans and tests. And again, I'm going to keep referring sometimes because it felt like a movie. Some
Mm.
of this, like a script. I remember I was, again, when I came to after consciousness, I remember my partner being on one side, and there was quite a few people in the room, about 4 people, which was a lot when you're in this ICU cubicle. I was attached to every single machine possible. Like, I didn't even know these things existed. It was almost like right on cue, a director yelling action. And I remember a man's voice coming in. I was totally horizontal, could not move, could not really see anything, and I'm very groggy, in and out of consciousness.
Mm.
I remember a beautiful nurse's voice saying to me, "It's all right, Dal, you're in hospital." And I was just like, I don't know. And it was almost like right on cue, a man's voice said, "She's had a brain hemorrhage."
Yeah.
And then there's silence. And it's
Yeah,
like
exactly.
it's an eerie silence, because and I remember I sort of tried to open my eyes. I remember my partner's head over my face, and his eyes are like, because everyone had to wear masks.
Yeah,
His
because they
eyes
can't
are
put you
on
under, can they? You're
no,
conscious at the time during brain
yeah.
operations.
that's it. So, well, I didn't have an operation at the time, but we'll go into that.
Oh, okay.
I had one the next day when well, was it spoiler alert, I survive.
Well,
Um,
yeah, it's right.
so, yeah, that's it. So there's this feeling. I remember he comes around, he sits, he grabs my hand. There's this eerie silence, and I remember someone. It's almost like they go into this zone where they're like, "Okay, is there family you can call?"
Mm,
And I remember sort of mumbling. I don't have a lot of family living in Melbourne. I've got family out of Melbourne and overseas. And I remember I mumbled, "Ring my brother." He was the closest. And also it was almost like, and as I say, they're almost giving you the preparation speech. No one's going to tell you, no one's telling you you're going to live. No one's
mm.
telling you you're going to die.
No,
But no
exactly.
one, but they're going into this preparation zone. So have you got family you can call? And is everything, all your affairs in order type
Mm,
thing?
mm.
So my my partner, I'm gonna refer to him as partner and ex, depending on where we're at. So my
Yeah.
partner must have I think went and called my brother. I'm in and out of consciousness. I'm not remembering anything. I remember my brother and then at some point when it happened, my brother came in. I remember it was very emotional. Um, and I think also they called him away to try and get as much family history as we could because we don't have any history of any brain traumas or disruptions happening. My grandmother's lived to a great old age. My grandfather passed away of prostate cancer. Like it's this was really uncommon in my family,
Yeah.
and obviously with COVID going on, so I was remaining in ICU under serious watch.
Mm.
Being just fed all these, they're like, we just have to keep feeding her all these because the risk of me having something happen again was incredibly high.
Yeah, sure.
Um, so and because it was COVID, like, my brother and my partner couldn't stay. So it was bas and it's interesting, I don't know whether you found this with your journey, like,
Mm.
you can't your body's, like, in chaos, but you can still hear things.
Yes.
And, I remember I remember a nurse just going,
Sometimes you feel like going, "Shut the
"Yeah,
bang," you
that's
know,
that's it. I've heard you." And
"Hello,
yeah,
can
that's
you?"
it. That's it. It's like I've clocked you.
Yeah, yeah.
And I remember a nurse saying, "We'll call you if anything changes." And I'm like, "Okay." So again, you're preparing for the worst, not knowing otherwise.
Yeah.
And then that first night in ICU was one of the longest nights of my life. I literally sat there. Okay, and I remember thinking to myself, going, "Okay, well, at some point this evening, I'm gonna die." And
Mm,
that's how you sat that's how I sat in that space.
wow. And so then and when we still haven't even sort of delved into to the moment of diagnosis and so on afterwards, but what was it like that I'll stay on the hospital track, but the moment coming out of hospital, like, to me, that was I remember, my wife picked me up and this was at the prostatectomy,
Yeah.
and because I couldn't sit up, right, so she had the car all set up so I could just lie down, and it was about an hour away from home, and my parents were home and all that sort of thing, and so it was a really lovely experience,
Mm,
but COVID, wow,
mm.
what happened? How'd you get out of there?
I escaped. No,
Yeah, totally.
I look, we felt well, 2 weeks later, although, there's more that I could unpack, I was in nothing was presenting like it was going to happen again, well, at that time. I was in a rhythm of taking the really high dose drugs that I needed to, which also needed to extend for another 30 days. So what people don't know is I went home and still had to set an alarm every 4 hours, even over a 24-hour cycle to take these drugs. And
Wow.
they're basically preventing my body from having a stroke.
Yeah, okay.
So statistically, I'll give you still hard facts. The type of brain hemorrhage I had, 1 in every 2 die immediately. So 50% usually die within moments,
Yep.
and then about 37% within the first 24 to 48 hours.
Mm.
And then obviously it goes down after 6 months, and then I'm just over 4 years on, and my statistics even lower. So, but we got to a point where we're in a rhythm with the medication. My body, I was able to sort of walk a very short distance unsupported. Initially, I couldn't do that. I couldn't even walk to the toilet on my own initially. My body was doing like the movements that they look for. And so that's when they decided, okay, you can go. And I was ready to go by then, I think. The nurses were amazing. I cannot fault the nurses. And I remember my brother came to pick me up and I got wheeled out. I was in a wheelchair thing, got wheeled out by a nurse. So that was a very surreal moment. I remember holding a teddy bear. And I just thought, I don't care. I'm 48 years old. I'm going to hold this teddy bear because it stayed with me the whole time.
Oh, lovely. Lovely.
Mm.
And so you got home, you survived that, you survived COVID, and then a couple of years later, what happened?
Yeah. So, that was, I got sort of thrown a real big curveball. So when I survived, all right, so I'll backtrack a little bit.
Yep.
When I survived the first night and the first night in ICU, that the neurologists had decided they were going to do a cerebral angiogram because we didn't, there was
Which
no obvious
is,
symptoms as to why
I
this
know,
happened.
what's a cerebral angiogram?
I know. So they go through and they actually go into your brain and have a look around to see what's going
Ugh.
on. I know, and you're awake.
Oh.
I know. I try and explain that to people. It's honestly, and you get wheeled into this room that's like a spaceship. I remember, and again, I was like dosed out of my eyeballs on drugs, and so you feel like you're tripping anyway.
Yeah.
But I remember going into this room, and on one wall was just this huge image of a brain. And so, and then they'd tell you, "We're going to sedate you." So I remember saying, "So I'm not asleep?" They're like, You're not allowed to be asleep. You
No,
can't be
that's
asleep."
right. You can't do. Yeah.
So I'm heavily sedated, and it's almost like they board you in so you don't move anywhere. And then they went through my wrist, actually. They did through my wrist and had a nice little party in my brain. So I know it's I still can't believe that that happens sometimes because it's really surreal. You can feel things and not feel things at the same time. But
That's
little
awesome.
did I know, so there's obviously risks having this done. Any type of tampering with the brain or any body
Sure.
part, as you know, there's
Sure.
obviously risks. I During the time in hospital, because of COVID, I was only allowed someone 2 hours a day. I didn't have anybody. So even in these 2 weeks going through all this,
Mm.
I hardly had anyone with me. So little did I know that during this cerebral angiogram, I had what's called, I'm going to throw some through medical words around.
Mm.
I had what's called a I had a cerebral angiogram, but I had what's called an embolic shower. So while they're in my brain, I know I'm throwing words out
No,
there.
no, just the sound of it just sounds awful.
So I had it within a short period of time. Funny, I was talking about this today with some colleagues. I had a short period of time, a whole lot of strokes happen
Ooh.
everywhere around my head. None of this was discussed with me
Hey.
until, as you've just said, a couple of years later when I'm part of some research which allowed me the opportunity to see a neurologist.
Mhm.
And so we got all my release papers. She got all my images. Well, I should choose they got all my images. And then so I got to see, so this happened in May 2021, and in February 2024 was when I got to see the images for the very first time. So seeing an image like of a video of like a rupture happening in your skull area is quite surreal.
Mm.
And then so we discussed things back and forth. We discussed where I'm at the time. And right as we we're finishing, she goes, "Oh, I want to show you something else." And she said, "Let me show you this video." And she said, so this happened during the procedure that you had, and you had what's called, and she was the one who explained all of this. And she said, I said, so what are you trying to say? Again, trying to fathom all this medical term that's not, new, not known to me. She said, basically, you had a lot of strokes at once. And she started counting, and she said, and I can count at least 20. And that's what she could count. She goes, but there's probably
Wow.
most likely more. And I remember being really numb. I remember sitting in my car, and I remember crying.
Mm.
And I remember calling a friend on the way home who knew I was going to this procedure. And I remember speaking to a friend who had had strokes. And then I sort of went, then every type of emotion, it was like an unraveling. Every type of emotion presented itself. And I went through a real stage of being angry. I went through because, as we said, if I'd known that I had gone through this, because I was experiencing symptoms that weren't making sense for what I'd went through. I was
Sure.
still experiencing other things. And it probably would have validated my voice. I remember, and you and I have been down the road, we've talked about things being invisible and,
Mm.
chronic illnesses and things being invisible. I remember trying to sit and explain things that I was feeling and experiencing, and you'll be fine, which you and I have sort of spoken
Yeah,
about.
that I really dislike that.
You feel that,
The
yeah,
vengeance.
that's
Oh,
it.
everything's
Yeah,
it'll be okay. You'll be
right.
right.
And you're
Far
like,
from the
"But
truth.
I'm confused and I don't feel okay." And I was very in tune with my body. I was always very healthy. Like this, that's why this was such a surprise that it happened. And, yeah, for a while I went down a very ugly rabbit hole of trying to comprehend, and I was very angry, like I was so angry.
Mm.
And then, I was lucky that I reached out to a friend and I just said, "I'm not coping," and with their support I went and stayed with her and her family for a bit of time, and then I went and got professional medical help just to help me through, just a dark phase of mental health,
Sure.
and I got the right help and support, but it was very hard. It was a very, very hard time.
And then you actually had strokes, like
Yeah, so
the
not only
real serious thing.
Yeah. So not only did I experience this, fancy brain hemorrhage that has all these fancy words,
Yeah.
24 hours later during a procedure, I had strokes. So I've learnt that, yeah, I had lots going on. So,
Wow.
and and also it's funny, as much as I also talk about being angry, I also
Mm.
went through a stage of like, and it's been called, survivor's euphoria.
Yep.
I went through that where you sort of go through. I wasn't about to go jump off a thing thinking I'm Superwoman or
Mm,
anything,
mm.
but you do go a little bit of a phase of feeling a little bit invincible because you've survived things that just are surprising that you survived.
Yeah. Yeah.
So a lot of really intense layers of emotions and feelings and experiences that I didn't have the capacity to understand or, at times.
And I suppose then the question sort of beckons from there. What was the most challenging aspect of actually receiving your diagnosis? Like, how did it alter your perception of self and all those sort of concepts?
It's a really good question because it's funny, you you're in the biggest fight of your life, so
Mm.
it is all about you. Yet I still remember, and I'll go back to that first night in ICU when I thought, "Well, okay, well, this is it." You are alone with your thoughts, and so it's just yourself, but you're also thinking about other people because it's so reflective. It's, that typical scenario, your life flashes before your eyes. And you start, for me, I don't know if it's the same for other people in a near-death experience. I started thinking about different things in my life or what I could in and out of, thinking at the time. I remember thinking people I'd met in my life. I remember thinking, I'd been married, and divorced. I remember thinking about my family a lot. I lived overseas for 15 years. I'd traveled the world and worked around the world. I remember thinking joyous things, yet also sad things as well, and things of not all of it, but a little bit of regret where you just think, "Oh, I wish that had worked out better between us," or "I wish
Mm,
we had been kinder to each other," or, "I wish things were a little bit different." Um, One thing I do remember is my niece was 17 at the time, and she was 6 months off being 18, and she was saving for a car. And I remember thinking, and you start planning. Like, I remember
mm.
thinking, "Okay, my will's in place," and I'm thinking, "Okay, my niece can get my car." So you are with yourself and putting in the fight of your life, but at the same time, you're putting a lot of thought into other people in your world and your experiences.
And what about aspirations? And we'll talk about life after the diagnosis a bit soon, but what about aspirations and sort of goals and life path and everything just before, and how this sort of disrupted all of that?
Yeah, every
What happens
aspect of
there? What happens to the sort of emotional roller coasters that you went through, I'm guessing?
well, you're forced,
Mm,
in a scenario like mine, and, I don't know whether it was the same for you. One day you're going along and then all of a sudden you get this diagnosis. So for me, and because mine was so abrupt and so quick and aggressive, every aspect of my life changed. So at the time when this happened, I was a full-time educator in quite an affluent school
mhm,
here in Melbourne. I was starting to go to auctions. I was going to buy a little apartment. Again, super healthy.
mm.
And yeah, so life was clocking along and functioning along to where I was at the time. And then this happens, and every aspect of your life gets thrown, you know, up shit creek.
And there's no
Obviously,
paddle.
no paddle, no paddle, just a lot of meds, but
Yeah.
no paddle. So, yeah, so I remember obviously I went through the mandatory signing off from work, and it's interesting, there wasn't a lot I could do. I was very fragile. I'd lost a hell of a lot of weight.
Mm.
It's the most unhealthiest weight, loss program out there, but, I'd lost a lot of weight, and my taste and I was so disorientated. And so you just go home and it's like it was Groundhog Day for quite a while, and a
Mm.
lot of sleep, a lot of rest. COVID's going on, no one can visit, or, they're going through being in Victoria, as you know, our
Yes.
mandatory things it was a bit of a shit show.
You had the worst of the
So
worlds, literally.
yeah, yeah, we did. So I don't wanna wear that badge anymore, but,
No.
so peop what was beautiful though is my colleagues at works, I was working at a school where, of a particular culture where food is really a big part of their celebration. So,
Mm.
like a bunch of Italian nonnas, it's almost like it went on the airwaves. "Melissa's lost a lot of weight and she's home. We need to feed her."
The
And
Mediterranean hospitality
I
came
can tell you
rolling
that's
in.
it did. It was like it was in abundance. They set up the roster, and then I think the first lady who dropped off my stuff took one look at me and must have said, "She looks like shit, get the food coming." And the roster went out the window. So I'm as much as I'm no longer at that role in that
Uh-huh.
job, I am forever, forever grateful until my my proper last breath that of how much nourishment they gave me. I was not in a condition to do any of that.
Mm. And so how do you process the emotional upheaval that accompanies a diagnosis and a complete change? What happens then?
That's a really good question because I think the processing, I would say, went on for a couple of years. I think you go through every layer possible. You're in shock,
Mm,
and also the medication throws you about. And I was still on medication for a while after. So I think when that starts, and the pain, like I was in a lot of pain, for a good 6 months. And as much and I one thing I do have is a high pain threshold,
mhm,
but far out, I was in pain. I was in pain, and I'm not someone who has an addictive type personality, but I did have to go on very strong painkillers for a while, and which bring on their own side effects as well. But I was just in so much I remember just the pain for a good 6 months, and, but it's just surreal. You go through shock and you go through disbelief, and then that also comes with repeating the story of when people start finding out, and als I remember my phone
Ugh,
calls
I remember that
could
so well. Yeah.
yeah, the phone calls, the shock, and then I also, at the time, got a lot, because there was a lot of, controversy around the COVID, vaccination. So people thought, I had it because of that, and then they brought in their own conspiracy theories, and all I wanted was just someone just to sit and hold my hand and just go, "Holy shit, this is a lot."
Mm.
And I'm here. I don't know what to say to you, but I'm here. And it's into also, I don't know whether you found this as well, like, when I went through what I went through, people also like to tell me about all the people who went through something very similar and died.
And died. Yeah, that's right, exactly.
Did you? Yeah, and you're just like, I know.
Um,
I know what that feels like, and I that happened a lot, and
and how did
I
you
had
answer that? How did you learn to just shrug that off and go, "Well, you're not an idiot," but, you just go,
mm,
"Oh, great. Yeah, righto," and
I
try and give them some
that's
sort of response that didn't shut them down, you know?
a couple people I did shut down. Um,
Go for it.
I did because it hurt. It hurt
Mm,
hearing it. It
mm,
hurt, like, it's just like, I don't need to hear this from you. I don't I am aware. I am closer to what that person went through than and
mm,
I'm aware, and I know people are trying to do it in their way. They're almost trying to tell, "Well, you're lucky you didn't die."
mm,
But one thing about hidden disabilities, like, someone's life, every aspect of my life changed. There's people, sadly, who feel their life is worse off.
mm,
And some people wish they did die, and that's brutally honest. They've had to totally restructure. I'm very fortunate. I've made an amazing recovery. I've worked my ass off with it,
mm,
but, there's people out there who doing their damn finest, but, it's hard.
mm,
It's hard.
it is. And so I've had a look at your Substack and your websites and so forth, and we've got a bit of a synergy going.
Yeah.
On my personal Substack, I say, life before 50 was Paul Cobbin 1.0, life after 50, as in after prostate cancer and so on, is life 2.0. In what ways does your diagnosis and the events that happen, how does that redefine your sense of identity or and purpose, you know?
That's a really good question, because that's one thing that I want to get into more, is talking is helping navigate people through their
Mm,
change in identity. Because again, um, people grow and evolve through the human experience anyway. We get different types of people. Those who, what I call, function, and they're those who continue evolving and developing their identity to how they want to live and be purposeful in their life.
mm,
Um, so I think the change of identity gets thrust upon you. You go through the layers of the shock and the recovery in time. And then I would say also, like, I've done 2 seasons on my podcast. I haven't done it for a little while. I'd love to get back into it again. But, um, if anything, I created the podcast for selfish reasons, even though I paid for all the process of it all, was to hear other people's stories, and to hear, as much as it wasn't all about just stroke and brain, just hearing other people go through their adversity and how they handled it. I got to meet an amazing Paralympian, and
mm,
people in America also supporting people going through the adversities. So I think the biggest thing you have to do is forgive yourself. You go through a lot of guilt and shame because you look the same on the outside in my scenario, but you're not the same on the inside, and people still treat you the same. So the identity thing, a lot of it gets shed away. A lot of your old life gets shed away. Like, I'm obviously not in the same job. I'm not with my partner anymore. There's people who were in my life for a long time no longer. Um, but I'd say what I've worked hard on, probably especially in the last 12 months, is building my own new identity, Melissa 2.0. And I'm now, like, we're 4 years and a couple of months on. I wrote a recent piece about learning to be misunderstood, and that used to really get under my skin and upset me so much and bring me to tears, that the constant advocating, explaining yourself. And, I think in this human experience, no matter who it is, some people are just gonna get it, and some people are just gonna be the biggest dipshit no matter how many times you try and explain it.
Yeah, yeah.
I'd say identity, there's things though now that I probably love who I am more now,
Mhm.
because obviously your perspective and your value for yourself and your value for life, and, I definitely I like who I am more, and if anything, it's probably projected me onto things that I should have been doing all along, and this was a big, without going too woo-woo, this is a big universal, like, nudge in the brain to go, "Hey, this is gonna happen to you, but this is the direction you're gonna go, and this is the impact you're gonna make."
Yeah, but is it all sort of so I mean, if you think of the concept of 1.0 and 2.0 comes from the software background that, you know,
Mm,
any of the softwares were their first version,
mm,
and the second version wasn't a case of completely ditching the first version and all of a sudden you got a new software, because that doesn't work, right?
mm. Yeah.
You've got to just be an upgrade. So what's the stuff that you, without, going into too much detail, what's the
Mm.
stuff that you actually brought through from 1.0 to 2.0, and what have you built on there? And then what's totally new, and this is Melissa Gough 2.0 and I'm going for it.
I'm going for it. I still have the love of travel. I still consider myself a global citizen, even though I haven't been able to
Uh,
do it as
I
much.
love that concept.
Yeah, I am a global citizen. I was born and raised here in Melbourne, but I've lived overseas. I lived in the UK. My family's from the UK. I've always felt deeply connected to my DNA and my blueprint with that.
Mm.
I lived in the Middle East. I got to travel with parts of America for work. So there's still that curiosity. If anything, the educator is still very much within me. The knowledge sharing, wanting to make an impact and make a difference, that's still in me. Being curious about the world is still, um, within me. So there's parts of, and if anything, I probably feel a bit more passionate about that. Probably what's been diverted is I'm still very much the educator, and as much as I do it in a classroom, but now it's now being diverting to creating awareness and education, to speaking, to being part of research, um, just creating awareness. And if anything, just trying to make people aware, those who have gone and, supporting those who have gone through a significant adversity, but also trying to help those around them to have more of an understanding as well. So there's those aspects of me. I probably swear a little bit more than what I used to. Um, yeah, that's a real brain injury thing, I've been told. So
Yeah,
I
I've
don't
heard that
yeah,
too. Yeah.
yeah. So I probably swear a little bit. So my new identity, I probably swear a little bit more. Um, I was always sort of a passionate, articulate person, but I'm probably a little bit more direct now. But also, I try to explain to people it's not from a place of being rude. It's from a place like when I wake up in the morning, it's like explaining a battery.
Mm.
My brain is at 100% capacity, but the battery runs lower faster than someone who doesn't have a brain injury or any brain disruption.
Yeah.
So sometimes I just get to the point because I'm trying to reserve my energy. So there's parts of that. I've always had this spiritual element to life. I was always into meditation and things like that. I'm probably even more so into that now. Um, yeah, and new things that I've done is I probably more advocacy. I'm more of an advocate. So even as a primary school teacher, when you're sitting in, when you're sitting in meetings and things, you are advocating for kids to, excuse me, especially if they've got things they need and support. So I've always been a speaker for others. So learning how to advocate for yourself has been sometimes hard. But at the same breath, my passion for speaking up for others and making sure they're heard is very much there.
And so you've shared your story with people, you're advocating and so forth, your podcast and writing. How does that, or has that it's a double-barreled question, I suppose, influenced your healing process for yourself? Like, does it have any impact at all, or is...
Definitely. I'd say that's a good question. And, I know that when we finish, I'm like, "Oh, I should have said that, that, and that." But it's also me
Hey, we
in
can
my
always come back
brain.
for round two sometime.
Yeah, sure, I'd love to. Just the processing part. This is what people don't see, but, can you just ask that to me again? It's like, can you
Yeah, I
just
was
say that to me again?
just about how sharing your story and advocating and the writing and the podcasting, how it influences your own healing process, or does it have any impact at all? And just, well, really, it doesn't, and it's not that sort of that sort of a process or an influence.
Yeah, I get where you're going now. So, the podcast was healing.
Right.
Hearing people's stories was healing. Hearing as much as if they've gone through something different, the commonalities of what we were feeling, the themes and the layers, the non-linear recovery, how people responded around them, I often found there was very similar themes. So the podcasts provided healing at a time where we couldn't be in each other's company. So
Mm,
I got a lot of joy and healing in hearing their stories. Whilst also I found healing in the fact that I was also putting their voice out there and creating awareness for others.
mm,
I had so many, like my second interview was amazing. I got to interview a paramedic from the mobile stroke unit. There's
mhm.
only one of these in Australia, and I was really lucky I got to have one of the paramedics.
Oh, wow.
And he was phenomenal, and, I had so many people come up to me after that going, "Didn't even know it existed. Thank you for making awareness." I know. So, I I got a lot of healing in the sense that I felt like I was fulfilling a new part of the healing was like I was almost creating this new purpose within myself, and the biggest thing is hearing other people's stories made me feel seen and made me feel heard and made me feel less alone. So
Mm,
I thought, well, if this is making me feel like this, I'm hoping it's doing the same for others.
mm,
So,
mm. And what advice would you offer to someone who's grappling with a sudden life-changing diagnosis? I mean, I see there's a couple of people here who are subscribers to my Substack, and some of them are actually going through or just passing through that sudden life. Some have just survived their event and are moving on.
mm,
What sort of advice or guidance would you offer them?
That's a really good question. Um, Hindsight's also a beautiful thing. I didn't always get it right. I'd say um, just be in the day and just know that if you're having a good day, the next day might not be so good, and that's okay. It's all nonlinear.
Mm,
I would also say that the people who are in your world aren't always going to respond in the way that you think and may not be there in the way that you expect. Um, Very hard not to take it personally because you're in the fight of your life and you're just wanting people to be there. I'd say be patient with yourself, be kind with yourself when people respond in the way they do. We can only respond and mirror in the way of our own life experiences.
mm.
So um, I wasn't an expert in what I'd gone through.
None of us are.
So
It just
it,
happens,
it, it just happened. So I just think, and just celebrate. Let's just celebrate yourself. Like just and don't put too much on into. Don't think too far into the future. Like just be present with where you are now,
Mm,
and the rest will come. And don't put too much pressure that you need to be achieving milestones. Just 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 be calm and present in where you are. And if you want to cry, cry. If you want to scream, scream. If you want to be angry, be angry. Be all of those. Just
mm,
just get it out. Don't suppress it. I did it as well. I think people are scared to speak their truth because they're worried about the implications, but just do it. Just do it.
yeah, that's so
Mhm.
powerful. And if
Mm,
you could go back to the moment just before your diagnosis and
mm,
whisper one sentence to yourself, what would
mm.
you say?
Um, this is gonna be damn hard. Probably threw a couple of more swear words in there. You are gonna go through you are gonna go through the hardest time of your life. It is going to be hard, it is gonna be painful, it is gonna be raw, yet it is also going to be beautiful. It is going to be There's going to be unexpected moments of joy. People will show up, and also the most unexpected people will show up.
Mm.
And even though you're going to feel sad at the time, some people may not remain in your life, but you are going to meet the most amazing people with such depth and enthusiasm, and who are going to be your cheer squad.
Mm.
And 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 that part will see you through.
Oh, that's amazing. Well, Melissa, this is fantastic, but am mindful that we've been going now for nearly an hour, which is fantastic. I see Helen said here. Well, Helen said, having worked with Melissa, she's the most inspirational and bravest people I know. So that's
That's
just
really,
lovely.
thank you, Helen. I owe Helen a copy. I have to say, and see again, I didn't know Helen at all, or friends, colleagues like Helen. I didn't know when this happened. Helen and I have been working together for sort of nearly a year and a half, and she's probably been one of my biggest cheer squads with my writing.
Oh, lovely.
So yeah, and so the most the people who are going to be amazing in your life you haven't met yet,
Mm,
and they're going to come in.
mm.
So yeah.
Well, I've met one, and she's actually here tonight. I can see my lovely wife. She's
Oh,
we've been married for 30 odd years, and I tell you, without her, she is the cheer squad, the savior. She does, she's taken me through the cancer, she's taken me through the heart disease, all that sort of stuff. And to have that support, regardless of whether it's a partner or not, is just an incredible, incredible support. So I thank Rana, yes, you,
hi, Rana.
and and Helen. Those sort of people are fantastic. Does anybody have any questions here? By the way, I see there's a few people here in the audience. Before we start closing this? No, no questions? That's cool, because we've covered quite a lot of ground. So, Melissa, if people are wanting to know more about you and find you and all
Mm.
that sort of thing, first, Substack, where do they find you there? And I'll put some notes in when we repost this as a post, when I figure out how to do that. This is the first one, but apparently we
Yeah.
get a recording and then we can put it back up and all that sort of thing. So I'll do some of that, but where would we find you?
Well, yeah, so I've got my Substack. It's funny, the name of my company is called the Brain Gamechanger, which I still keep with the Substack. I'm on the social media pages, mainly Instagram as well. I've got a website, where people can come and find me and ask questions. Yeah, so it's very easy to contact me through my website, through my business, through socials, through Substack. So, and thank you for also just highlighting and asking questions. That, if anything, that's probably one thing. Um, I like. It's funny. Helen has been one example of that, and it's good when people ask you questions, because people just assume,
Mm,
they've they catch on to some of the words you've said and just assume. Asking questions makes you feel seen, and it also creates the awareness. And so asking questions is really important. So any question, I'd rather people someone to come and ask me a really uncomfortable question, and they get the awareness, than pretending they know.
mm. Yeah, really well. Well said. Thank you, Melissa.
Okay.
So that really wraps it up for us tonight. If anybody would like to watch this again, it'll be available, so I'm told, in a post after it's recorded and sent back to me. And also, one of the things I would like any of you who have watched it tonight to do, because you'll never know if somebody is actually suffering from a chronic condition, or you'll never know what might just save them. So, for their sake, please make sure you share this recording. Make sure you share any of the posts that you see. Melissa and I will do some follow-up posts and co-posts and so forth, following this conversation and carrying on that theme a little bit more. But look, thank you everybody for turning up. I didn't expect anybody to turn up tonight. That wasn't the plan. It was just
Turnout.
Literally, Melissa and I met yesterday afternoon in the Aussie Substack. Sort of, we've got this accountability group that gets together, and I heard Melissa mention her story on little tidbits of it. And I went, "Ooh, that
Mm.
would be perfect for this current chapter that's out at the moment." And so I thought, "Oh, let's reach out to her," and so I did, and we went from there. So it's been very ad hoc, no forward promotions or anything like that. Just get in and do it, as my wife. I mean, my wife said to
Yeah,
me
the
ages
best
ago.
natural way.
Exactly. She said to me, "Look, just write your bloody book and put it out there. Don't worry how it's going to work or whatever, all that sort of stuff. Just
She's a good lady, your Rana. She's
oh
good.
yeah, yeah, yeah." See, I haven't spoken about her, Rana, but your name just sticks with people. But anyway, that's a whole
Mhm.
nother story. Thank you very much, everybody, and we hope you enjoyed the evening. Thank you, Melissa. It's been a pleasure.
Thanks, Paul. It's been wonderful. Great to be with you.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.